Hey y'all, welcome back. Let's work an example of a shock to a market using our supply and demand model. So for this example, let's look at the market for bicycles. So these are completed bicycles that you buy at the store. So we want to think about the market, and which market are we looking at? We're looking at the market for bicycles. And what's our shock or event that we want to take a look at? So let's suppose that the price of bicycle tires increases. Right, so the price of tires increases. How the heck do we go about thinking about this question? Well, we've got a three-step process to do that. So our first step is just trying to answer which curve is affected. Right? So which curve? So how do we figure out which curve it is that we're looking at? Well, in other videos, we thought about buckets of shifters. So we had buckets of shifters for demand, and we had some buckets of shifters for supply. So for demand, what shifted around the demand curve? It was the number of buyers, buyers' income, the price of a related good, tastes and preferences, and buyers' expectations. So those were our 5 shifters or buckets of shifters for the demand curve. What affects supply? So the first bucket of shifters we had for supply was the number of sellers. The second one was a change in input costs. The third one was a change in production technology. And then finally, the fourth one was sellers' expectations. So if we've got that list, we can just kind of work our way down it and figure out which curve is being affected. Right? Number of buyers. Nope, that's not it. Buyer's income. Nope, that's not it. Price of a related good, like a complement or a substitute. Nope, that's not it. Tastes and preferences. No. Buyer's expectations. No. Number of sellers. No. Input costs. Oh, there we go. All right. Tires are needed to make bicycles. This is a story about an input cost. So which curve is affected? This is going to be a story about supply. So then our second step is which direction does the curve shift? So before we do that, let's go ahead and set up our model so we can visualize this shift. So if we set up our supply and demand model, what are we looking at? We're looking at the market for bicycles. We're thinking about price, quantity. We've got a supply, we've got a demand, and there's some initial equilibrium. Right? So we'll call that P1 and Q1. All right, so our second step, if we know this is going to be a story about the supply curve, what's going to happen to the supply curve? Well, if an input cost increases, in this case, the price of tires, how are sellers going to respond? Are they going to want to sell more bikes at the same price they were selling them for? Or are they going to sell less bikes, fewer bikes at that price? They're going to sell fewer, right? So supply is going to decrease. So remember, sellers can't necessarily control price. They're taking it as given. So how do they respond? They respond by changing their quantity. So this is a story about the supply curve moving left or right. So if the price of tires increases, we know that supply is going to decrease, which means supply is going to shift to the left. right? It's going to shift to the left. So what is our next step? Well, our next step, our third step and final step, is let's just draw it in and see what happens. This is the hardest piece of work, is figuring out which curve and which direction. So the third step is draw and see what happens. All right, so what happens if supply shifts to the left? So if supply decreases, not surprisingly, fewer bicycles are going to be sold. And why are fewer sold? Well, because prices have increased. So we shift the supply curve to the left, we find our new equilibrium point, and at that new point, we say, okay, what happened? So price increased and quantity decreased. The key to working through hard problems is take them and break them down into smaller problems. A question like this of what happens if the price of bicycle tires increases to the market for bicycles breaks down into 3 small problems. Which curve is affected? Which direction? Draw it in and see what happens. Hopefully you're getting a feel for how we can use our 3-step process to work through shocks to economic markets. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.